In the space of a single breath, your entire world can change. All of us are one decision away from altering the entire course of history, for good or for ill. What would you do if you had to save the world, if the future of humanity laid upon your shoulders? What are you doing right now? Because the truth is, it already does. And tomorrow, as the sun rises, it could come with the same old day in and day out that's grown to be so familiar to you. Or your entire world could change. On October 23, 2077, one such day came. Across the entire world, nuclear bombs peppered the skies and rained destruction down on human civilization. The next day, the sun rose on a new future. A new normal dominated the planet, and the mundane would never, ever be the same. Some saw this eventuality coming and holed themselves up in survival compounds dug into the very ground. Some even built defenses to protect that which they loved and fomented plans to rebuild from the ashes of destruction. Yet others were trapped wherever they were and soldiered on, oblivious somehow to the outside world. Extreme questions produce extreme answers, and there seemed to be no right answer, no simple solution for how to live in this new world with new tomorrows. Amongst the thousands of solutions to the cosmic horror of what had been wrought upon the world, there was one to be found in the ruins of Massachusetts. The Commonwealth Institute of Technology, home to the greatest minds in human history, was not spared from the wrath of atomic fire, but the predominant minds within were. Numbering among the many who had the prescience to foresee the decimation of mankind, they sought to preserve the greatest achievements of their generation, of all of human history, from eradication. As the bombs fell across the world, the people of the Commonwealth Institute of Technology, or CIT, took refuge in the bowels of the campus, shielding themselves, at least temporarily, from the initial onslaught of shock, fire, riots, mutants, and radiation. But things were not easy going at first. Their home was little more than a basement, sparse even when compared to Vault-Tech's underground bunkers. After all, what worth is the greatest mind in history if it starves to death or dies from poisoned water or is bashed over the head with a rock by a feral survivor while out scavenging for supplies? So down they dug, using all the pre-war technology and innovations that they had available to them, and scrounged together not just enough to survive, but enough to live. They found a new normal in this underground place that they've come to call home, a new mundane. They continued their work in science and engineering. They married, made babies, educated those babies as they grew up, and their population swelled. They dug deeper, smoothed out the rough edges of their basement home, and as they died, passed on the mantle of their legacy to their children with a mandate: to not look to the past, to not emulate the failures of humanity. Don't chase the normal of the dark ages that nearly led to the extinction of the human race. Move forward, progress, find a new definition of normal, of humanity. Mankind redefined. And so these children, now grown, took upon themselves the burden of redefining what it means to be a human in a world soaked in radiation and monsters. And so they took this imperative upon their backs and marched ever forward, dubbing themselves the Institute, as both a reminder of their heritage, but also a reminder of their sacred duty to save the human race. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and months turned into years. Decades passed, and ever deeper did the Institute dig, both into the earth and into the veins of knowledge and innovation. Above them, humans did what humans do best: adapt. New normals were the order of the century, and as the vaults opened and people left their fallout shelters to find this new hellscape called Earth, the survivors carved out a place for themselves. Together, they came, formed communities, towns, and a new mundane came into their world. There was room again for boredom, for the sameness of the sun rising and setting to monotony. Petty dramas, love, fights, life, and death all played out both above ground and below as humanity persevered, redefined itself. Like the humble cockroach, human determination is a difficult force to snuff out. For over 100 years, the Institute toiled below the irradiated surface, digging deeper, refining, redefining, and creating. As they grew, as their need to simply survive became less and less imperiled, as their technology surpassed that which came before the bombs dropped, they found their needs more and more burdensome to manage. Cooking, cleaning, security, scavenging when needed, all these things take time and energy that could be spent elsewhere. Investigating mutations, bioengineering, cyborg organ replacements, and most importantly, energy. The Institute needed a colossal amount of energy to fuel its research in all its fields. With all their sanitized beauty, medicine, and food, they dangled by a thread just as those above did. One or two wrong moves, and all that they had worked for would come crumbling down. In the meantime, to handle the mundane tasks of their new normal, they turned to technology and science to provide a solution. The Synth. Short for synthetic humanoids, synths were the solution to 1,000 problems. Generalized laborers, they could cook, clean, provide security, and importantly, investigate the wasteland above without risking a single human life. Modeled after the human, the world's greatest generalized laborer, the synth unburdened the Institute greatly, allowing them to delve ever deeper into the limits of science and engineering. They even discovered the secret to teleportation, meaning that they could permanently seal off the entrances to the Institute, adding an extra layer of security, of partition between them and the world above. Through 2 generations, they labored, tweaked, and developed before arriving at a perfect Generation 2 synthetic, capable of more abstract thought and handling more complicated directions. But progress surges ever forward, and as capable as these synthetic humanoids were at taking the trash to the recycling processors and at keeping the floors clean and at administering medical care, they were imperfect. No matter how sophisticated they made their robot brains, they were just that. Robots, computers housed within humanoid bodies, and as their work grew in complexity, the amount of time the Institute needed to dedicate to their work and away from the menial also grew. They needed more Byzantine servants. At first, they experimented with upgrading their Mark II synthetics with independent thought, but this route was determined to be a failure. Then they realized that there was already a model for what they sought to achieve: the human being. 150 years after the bombs dropped, it had all come to this, full circle. Humanity, with all its flaws, was the most elaborate thinking and working machine that had ever come into existence. In fact, the original synths were built upon this very idea. Why not take it to its natural conclusion? They required one thing to move forward: a sample of human DNA, unadulterated by radiation and any diluted evolutionary viruses that may be floating around in the wasteland above. So they sent their agents above ground to delve, below ground once again into one of the Vault-Tec vaults. Innovation, like all great things, sometimes requires sacrifice. In the next 50 years, the Generation 3 synths, fully human-like in every way, were developed and put into production. This paralleled other biomechanics advances in the labs and allowed the Institute to focus on its most important goal in its entire bicentennial existence: the launch of a fusion reactor dedicated to the purpose of advancing mankind's next generation into a newer, brighter future. The Institute is not without its critics: the Brotherhood of Steel, zealous missionaries who seek to control all technology in the world or destroy that which they can't have; the Railroad, a group of freedom-fighting vigilantes who seek to free the Generation 3 synths from their servitude and eradicate the Institute altogether; the Minutemen, stylized after American revolutionaries of the same name, take issue with the Institute's activities above ground. They do meddle, the Institute. They have run the simulations, they've done the math, and without intervention, they believe that the new societies of the wasteland are doomed to crumble. As such, they have abducted key members of society and replaced them with Generation 3 synths to, in their mind, stabilize and lead humanity to a new, greater future. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we, the defense, do not deny the many crimes of the Institute. They have kidnapped, they have killed, they have unleashed Pandora's box with the creation of the Generation 3 synthetics. Are they human? What is humanity? Is humanity the collection of cells that uniquely work together in tandem to create a larger functioning system that resembles, well, us? Is humanity sentience? What is sentience? Can you tell me? For just as the Generation 3 synths were gifted with complex thought by the Institute, so too were we gifted with complex thought by our parents that birthed us. Does where it comes from matter? It is the position of council that the production of Generation 3 synths should indeed be halted as a violation of the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution. Does the Constitution still matter? Does it matter if it matters? It's clear that the scope of Generation 3 synths spun disastrously out of the control of the scientists of the Institute. I am not here to deny the crimes of the Institute nor claim that they shouldn't have consequences for the choices they made to commit those crimes, but consider the other options. A group of religious fanatics who have no consideration at all for the future of humanity, rather only care insofar as they can contain and control all the technology and power that they can get their hands on. Then the railroad of noble intention that would also see the entirety of the Institute, the most advanced safe haven in the entire world, destroyed. Medical advances to change a generation, food production, clean water, infinite electricity and power. All of this gone in an instant. The same for the Minutemen, who would see the Institute decimated solely so they can lead the wasteland to its inevitable doom. It is the case that the Generation 3 synths are more trouble than they're worth, and that they execute moral quandaries that would be pure arrogance to continue to pursue. Something, perhaps, that a new leader of the Institute could easily change with but a snap of their fingers. But to eradicate 2 centuries of technology that could be used to benefit humanity as a whole in just a generation or two, is it worth it, Wastelanders, to destroy this place because they made some errors along the way? I ask again, what would you do if the future of humanity laid on your shoulders? What would you do if you faced down the nuclear apocalypse, the end of the world, and came out the other side? What lengths would you go to in order to ensure not only the survival, but humanity's capacity to thrive was preserved? Would you do anything? Would you crumble under the pressure? What mistakes might you make? Today is one normal, and in an instant you could be experiencing a new one tomorrow. What might desperation and necessity wring from you in that hour? Thank you everyone for watching the 3rd episode of Devil's Advocate. Be sure to put in the comments section below what lore I left out to benefit my argument, and whether you think the Institute are the best or the worst faction in Fallout 4. I actually don't want to make just Fallout videos here, since we haven't been a Fallout channel in ages, but I felt compelled to make this specific video ever since I came up with the Devil's Advocate series idea, because ages ago I made a video condemning the Institute. I always thought it was weird that the other factions didn't just clean out the people in the Institute and shut down the factories, but they just straight up destroyed the only functioning fusion reactor within miles, as well as the only place with modern medical facilities and food production. Like, you could save the whole of humanity with the stuff that you just blew up. Just turn the synth factories off. Anyway, that's my spiel. If you're still here listening, thank you, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet.